I sat by the floor-to-ceiling window of my downtown apartment, the city lights reflecting off the glass like scattered stars. The silk of my blouse brushed against my skin as I sipped my coffee, smooth and slightly bitter, grounding me in a moment that felt almost too calm. My phone buzzed insistently on the marble countertop. I hesitated before picking it up, knowing the name flashing across the screen would bring a flood of memories I'd buried 11 years ago. Cassie. The voice on the other end was cautious, almost hesitant. It belonged to someone who knew the past I'd tried so hard to escape. 11 years. 11 years of my parents blaming me for my sister's accident, their eyes always narrowing, their words sharp and relentless. I had built a life that was quiet, professional, controlled. I posted only glimpses, hiding my real success, my independence. I couldn't let them think they still had any power over me. Yet now, holding the phone, I felt a tremor of fear, of unresolved guilt, mixed with a strange, simmering curiosity. What could they possibly want now? 11 years of silence and blame had taught me to brace for pain, but a part of me, quiet, stubborn, wondered if this was finally the moment the truth might slip through. The city hummed around me, but I felt isolated, suspended between who I had become and the girl they never believed in. My fingers tightened around the cup. Whatever this was, it would change everything. I remember that day like it happened yesterday, though I was only 16. My sister, Lily, had been playing near the creek behind our house when the accident happened. My parents' voices were sharp, cutting through the air like knives as they screamed at me, their words accusing, unforgiving. "This is your fault, Cassie. If you had just been paying attention, she'd be fine." Their eyes, usually warm and steady, were stormy with blame. My throat tightened and I couldn't speak. My hands shook so violently I could barely hold my backpack. I wanted to scream that it wasn't my fault, that I had done everything I could, but their words drowned mine. My chest ached, not just with fear, but with a helpless anger that I was being punished for something beyond my control. I felt small, cornered, and utterly alone. That afternoon, my grandmother came by. She sat me down in the worn leather chair in her sunlit living room, the scent of lavender soap and old books enveloping me. She didn't scold or lecture. Instead, she handed me a small, leather-bound journal. "Write what you feel, Cassie," she said softly, her eyes unwavering. "One day, this will remind you that truth matters more than their fear or blame." Her words sank in, quiet but powerful, like a seed taking root. I spent hours that night scribbling in that journal, tears falling onto the pages as I wrote down everything my parents had said, everything I had seen, and everything I knew to be true. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of control, a whisper that maybe I could survive this without their approval, without their forgiveness. By the end of that week, I made a choice. I would not let their blame define me. I would build my own life, far from their judgments and accusations. I tucked the journal under my bed, a small but steadfast talisman, a reminder that even in the face of betrayal, I had the power to create my own path. After high school, I moved to Chicago with nothing but a suitcase, my grandmother's journal, and a determination I couldn't fully articulate. Every apartment I looked at felt tiny, every job offer insufficient, but I carried the quiet defiance that had been growing inside me since Lily's accident. I enrolled in night classes while working as a barista during the day. My hands became calloused from lifting trays and typing spreadsheets, and the nights were long, sometimes lonely, but each day I felt myself inching closer to a version of life that wasn't dictated by blame. It was at a seminar on marketing that I met Eleanor, a woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair and eyes that missed nothing. She noticed my hesitation during a networking exercise and called me out, gently but firmly. "You're capable of more than hiding in the shadows," she said. Her words cut through years of self-doubt like sunlight through a storm. Under her mentorship, I learned not just skills but how to value myself, how to trust my instincts, and how to turn ideas into action. The early months were brutal. I spent countless nights drafting proposals, pitching to clients who didn't return my calls, and questioning whether I had the strength to keep going. There were times I wanted to quit, to go back to the familiar comfort of anonymity, but every time I opened my grandmother's journal, her words reminded me that truth and persistence were my allies. Slowly, small victories appeared. My first freelance client paid on time. My first big project became a portfolio highlight. I remember the thrill of seeing my first paycheck from a major deal, proof that I was no longer just surviving but thriving. I kept my success quiet from my family, crafting an online presence that showed only glimpses of my life, coffee shop snapshots, scenic city walks, occasional work achievements. None of it revealed the extent of my independence, my rising career, or the office I had transformed into a space that reflected my vision. It was my secret rebellion, my private proof that I had built something extraordinary while they clung to outdated blame. Years later, I had a thriving consultancy, respected by peers, and a life I could be proud of without needing their approval. Every award, every client win, every late-night breakthrough was a brick in the foundation of my self-respect. And yet, despite the success, a part of me always carried that tension from the past, the shadow of being unjustly accused, the quiet ache of a family fractured by misplaced blame. That ache would stay with me until I finally found the piece of evidence that changed everything, the real police report. The knock on my office door startled me, though I had expected them eventually. My parents, hesitant yet familiar, stepped inside, their faces a mixture of curiosity, apprehension, and the faintest trace of superiority, the same expression they had worn when I was the guilty one. They looked around the space as if it were unfamiliar territory, and in many ways it was. My office was a reflection of the life I had painstakingly built. Expensive abstract paintings adorned the walls, each with a story of a client who had believed in me when my own family had not. Bookshelves were lined with neatly arranged awards, portfolios, and journals, my grandmother's still there, worn and beloved, a silent witness to every triumph. A sleek mahogany desk sat in the center, stacked with contracts, letters of commendation, and a laptop open to a client proposal. Yet despite the elegance, there were touches of warmth, a small plant that caught the sunlight just right, a framed photo of Lily smiling, completely unaware that her accident had caused me so much anguish. My parents' eyes darted from one corner to the next, trying to take it all in. I waited. I let the silence stretch, allowing them to absorb the reality of the woman they had never believed in. I could see the wheels turning, the disbelief forming lines across their foreheads, the shame growing heavier by the second. Finally, I spoke. "I know why you're here," I said, my voice calm but firm. "You've come to check on the girl you blamed for 11 years. The girl you insisted was responsible for Lily's accident. The one you treated as though she were broken beyond repair." They flinched at the weight of my words, but I wasn't done. "I want you to see me as I truly am, not the version you created in your minds. I run my own company. I own my clients, my projects, my contracts. My net worth is something you would never have guessed because you only ever looked at me through the lens of guilt." Their mouths opened and closed like fish out of water, but I continued. "And I finally know the truth. The real police report cleared me of any responsibility for Lily's accident. 11 years of your blame, your anger, your punishment, it was misplaced. I carried it alone, and I thrived despite it." I watched as disbelief turned to shame, shame to awe. Their shoulders slumped, their posture shrinking in the space that I had claimed as my own. For the first time in over a decade, the power had shifted. I was no longer the accused. I was the woman who had built herself from the ashes of false blame, stronger and wiser than they could have imagined. For a moment, silence enveloped us, punctuated only by the distant hum of the city outside. Then my mother whispered, almost too softly to hear, "Cassie, we didn't know." I nodded, letting the truth settle in the room, a tangible weight that could not be denied. 11 years of lies, guilt, and false accusations ended here, in the space I had crafted, standing as a testament to resilience and undeniable achievement. I leaned against my desk, letting the city lights spill across the room, illuminating the truth they had finally been forced to face. I had the upper hand now, the balance of power finally resting where it should have all along. But this wasn't about revenge. It was about setting boundaries, reclaiming respect, and ensuring that the cycle of blame and toxicity ended with me. "I'm willing to help," I said slowly, deliberately, letting each word land. "But on my terms." Their eyes widened, and I could see the confusion mix with hope. They weren't used to me speaking this way. First, honesty. No more hiding things. No more projecting guilt onto me. Lily's accident was not my fault. You must accept that. My mother swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around the strap of her purse, but I pressed on. Second, accountability. You cannot manipulate, shame, or belittle anyone under the guise of love. If you want a relationship with me or Lily, you must treat us as equals, not subjects of your anger or regret. I paused, letting the words sink in. I could see their internal struggle, the instinct to defend themselves, to cling to the narrative they had maintained for over a decade. But I wasn't giving them a choice to argue. My voice softened slightly, the warmth of compassion threading through the firmness. Third, growth. Pursue your dreams, your passions, but leave the past behind. Apologies are not just words. Actions matter. Show me, and then we can move forward together. I noticed my father's shoulders slump, the weight of his guilt finally catching up to him. My mother's eyes glistened, but I didn't soften further. They needed to understand that their behavior over the years had consequences. This wasn't about making them feel small. It was about reclaiming the life they had tried to control. And finally, I said, holding up the leather-bound journal, remember this. Life is measured not by blame, but by the choices you make to move forward. I lived by that lesson, and now I'm offering you a chance to do the same. Meet these conditions, and we can start over. Fail, and the door is closed. Their silence was heavy, almost reverent. I could see that they understood. I wasn't threatening them. I was protecting myself. The power shift was complete, but not cruel. It was firm, intentional, and necessary. I had taken control of the narrative, the truth, and my own destiny. In that moment, I felt an unfamiliar lightness, a quiet satisfaction. For the first time in 11 years, the blame no longer hung over my shoulders, and my parents' recognition of their mistakes was not just acknowledgement. It was a possibility for change. And in that possibility, I realized lay both closure and the start of something new. Months passed, and the change I had demanded began to take shape. My parents, cautious but sincere, started attending therapy, seeking guidance for their patterns of blame and control. They reached out to Lily with small acts of support, helping with her college applications, celebrating her accomplishments without judgment or condescension. I watched from a distance at first, careful, but a sense of peace began to seep into my heart. The old wounds, though never forgotten, no longer dictated the rhythm of my life. I spent quiet mornings in my office, sipping coffee, flipping through my grandmother's leather-bound journal. Her words, faded but still clear, reminded me of how far I had come. Truth matters more than their fear or blame. I traced my fingers over the page where I had first written about the accident, feeling the weight of 11 years lift with every word I reread. The journal had been my talisman, my secret witness, and now it was a testament to resilience, courage, and unwavering self-belief. Lily hugged me one evening after a family dinner. She whispered, "I'm proud of you, Cassie. You saved yourself first, and then all of us." Her words were soft, but they struck me with the force of a lifetime of unspoken acknowledgement. I realized then that my journey wasn't only about reclaiming my life. It was about modeling strength and grace for the people I loved, even when they had faltered. I walked along the balcony of my apartment that night, city lights flickering like distant stars. The wind tousled my hair, the aroma of evening rain mixed with the faint scent of jasmine from the planter beside me, and I felt a quiet completeness. I had endured the blame, the isolation, the years of questioning my worth, and I had emerged not just unbroken, but empowered, luminous, and uncompromising in my self-respect. Closing the journal, I whispered to myself, a small smile tugging at my lips, "I am the author of my own story, and it ends with strength, independence, and grace. The city hummed below, but for the first time, I wasn't suspended between past and present. I was firmly in my own life, on my own terms, carrying both the lessons of pain and the triumph of my resilience. 11 years of false blame had shaped me, yes, but it did not define me. I had found the truth, embraced it, and finally, I was free.